The New York Times obtaining chilling posts, it says, are from the Idaho murder suspect, Bryan Kohberger, as a teenager. Times sharing screen grabs of the posts with Outfront, in which Kohberger reportedly says he feels no emotion, little remorse. One says, quote, "As I hug my family, I look into their faces. I see nothing. It is like I am looking at a video game." Out front now, Nicholas Bogle-Burrows, the reporter who broke this story. And Nick, I know that you identified and have now read through hundreds of messages from about a decade of time that you say were written by Kohberger. So this would go from the time he was a teenager all the way until now. Tell me more about what stood out to you in these posts.
Yeah, so it begins with these posts on a forum website when he's about 16 years old. And he's talking about feeling a range of mental health conditions or problems with his life. He talks about not being able to feel emotions, feeling like he's detached from the world. And as you mentioned, that when he hugs his own family, he sees nothing. He also described looking at his life and going through the motions like it's a video game. And he's really hard on himself, saying he feels worthless, that he's a jerk to people in his life, and doesn't feel bad about it afterwards. He also talks particularly about his dad, saying he treats his dad like dirt, even though he thinks of him as a good guy. And this is all back when he's in about high school and his later teen years. And what we know about his life after that is that he ends up becoming addicted to heroin around the time that he graduated high school in 2013, and that he's in and out of rehab. But then what's kind of interesting is after that, it seems like his life turns around somewhat. He goes to community college and starts studying psychology, and starts messaging other friends about saying he's interested in studying the minds of criminals. It seems like he's found a passion of some kind in psychology and criminology.
Wow.
And then he ends up going, of course, as we know, to across the country from Pennsylvania, where he grew up, to Washington State last summer, and starts a PhD program in criminology there.
So it's amazing to see this, and you've had a chance to read all through this, which has to be difficult. You say that one of his friends told you that Kohberger suffered from a neurological condition called visual snow, where people basically, as you describe it, see scattered dots, like sort of static on a television to people of a certain age. One of the posts you shared with us says, and I quote what you shared with us, "It's as if the ringing in my ears and the fuzz in my vision is simply all the demons in my head mocking me." What else do you know about the context there?
Yeah, the visual snow is a really little understood condition. It's like you said, it's static in your vision, like an old television, and there's really the cause is still not fully clear, but it really can be debilitating for some people. I want to be clear, it's not a sign of mental illness, and it's not something that anyone has said could explain these heinous killings. But it's something that he complained a lot about as a teenager, both to friends and on these online posts. And that was coupled with his complaints about life in general.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you very much. I appreciate your sharing your reporting with us in some of those posts, as disturbing as they are, as people try to understand this. Thank you. And on the back of Nick's reporting, let's now bring in Jim Fallon. He's a neuroscientist and professor of psychiatry and human behavior at UC Irvine. So, Jim, you hear Nick, the New York Times reporter, talking about Kohberger suffering from a condition called visual snow. And the Times says he referenced this with the initials VS in an online post that says, "When I get home, I am mean to my family. This started when VS did. I felt no emotion." Is there anything you can tell us about this visual snow condition?
Well, the visual snow is often associated with migraine. And it's thought to be generated by hyperstimulated neurons, the base of the temporal lobe. That's where a lot of visual processing occurs. And so, yeah, it's debilitating, and almost nothing is known about it. But it is a syndrome that it's you never hear about it being associated with murder or anything like that. Although, if you read the rest of his posts, and it seems clear that he's got a depersonalization syndrome,
And
which is a type of dissociative disorder where you feel separated from yourself.
is that when you're talking about, as Nick was just saying, sort of when he looks at the faces of his family members, he just says he feels nothing? That's what you're referring to?
Well, yes. You have on the top of your head right here in this area called parietal cortex, you have a GPS system, but what it does is it puts together your whole world. It tells you where your eyes are, relationship to your head, relationship to the world, and then it adds on emotion to that. And all of that apparatus in him seems to be damaged. And so he doesn't even connect with himself. So he doesn't even have self-empathy, which is extraordinary, right? And this lack of empathy toward others and himself, you often see it in psychopaths. I'm not saying he's a psychopath, but it's such a curious combination of things. But he was a heroin addict, and the heroin can trigger this dissociation, this depersonalization syndrome. It's like you're living in a dream where you're watching yourself. You can see this in schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, different psychiatric disorders where people feel separated from themselves. You see it in people who take hallucinogens.
Yes.
Where they tried, and so you see it in dream states. We've measured all sorts of dream states where you see this. And so anybody who's had these strange dreams where they're hanging over themselves or in anesthesia. And so many people have experienced this, but not all the time. They don't feel that it's occurring 100% of the time. In his case, it seems that he's living this all the time, like he's in a dream state, in a very disturbing dream state.
Well, Jim, thank you very much.
He knows all the words. He studied this.
Right. That I think is the most bizarre part about it, right? Is that he's able to make that connection and able to study it all as well and choose that entire path of learning. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Jim.